Hello, class. This is kind of weird. Yeah, so we're all doing something a little different. So I appreciate your help with staying with us in these kind of different times. We are going to be still talking through some of the material and some of the content together. I thought this would be a nice way to try and reach out and get just a more personal touch to your education. Just a word of warning: if you hear a scuffling in the background, that's the guinea pig Pumpkin. So I'm not being invaded. It's just the guinea. Just a quick heads up, these videos you can access, I mean, hopefully you've already seen it, but if you just see our courses, you go to our class, and if you go to our e-learning folder, and in here we'll have a little folder for each kind of lesson, if you will. I'll number them in sequential order. So today we'll be talking about John F. Kennedy's presidency, and inside this folder you're going to see a couple things. You'll kind of always see the materials you need to get through the content we're talking about. In this case, there's a kind of Microsoft Word document that's got some questions, and there's also the actual raw file of the PowerPoint, as well as then I'll have attached, once it's done, the audio and the screencast of what I'm seeing as I'm talking. What we're hoping for is to do this to keep you up with the content as we would have done in class, and then we'll be having some assessments on Fridays. So these assessments Fridays can take a variety of forms, but for the most part they're just kind of stopgaps, little informal assessments to try and make sure that we are keeping up with what we need to know from a week-to-week basis. That being said, if you want to have the Kennedy doc opened up and the Kennedy PowerPoint opened up, we'll be referring to those as we go through. Please feel free at any point to always reach out to me with questions, either through Schoology or through email, and I can certainly help you out. That being said, let's take a little look here at John F. Kennedy. Our target for today is built around really the importance of TV, something I think we're all getting to know a little bit more of as we are kind of in our self-quarantines. But we're talking about TV in terms of the Kennedy presidency, the election in 1960. In 1960, there's a few kind of names that you might be familiar with. On the left there is Richard Nixon. He was actually the vice president for Ike Eisenhower. Yes, that Ike Eisenhower of the interstate highway system, warning of the military-industrial complex. On the right there, we got a face that's also probably familiar, John F. Kennedy, but this is running for president. And for one of the first times ever, you're going to see television used in kind of a new way, as far as now being in everyone's homes. It's kind of supplanted the radio, and the television is going to really let people see the candidates in kind of a whole different way. There's no need for you to watch this whole video. The audio won't really come through from my video making. You could go back and open the PowerPoint to see it that way. But just even looking, Kennedy on the left is cool as a cucumber. He's got a nice suit, he's manicured, he's perfected. On the right, you can just see how nervous. Yeah, look at this guy, stuttering, kind of. That's a cool guy. And that's how people kind of took this in. They viewed Nixon on the right there as kind of unprepared for the rigors of the presidency, and they looked at Kennedy as someone they trusted. This truly kind of impacted voters for the first time. Never before would so much of your persona, your physical presence, really come across. It always was more of an idea of, hey, policy or what you've done before, not so much how you presented yourself. And this really kind of showed us a new realm of how TV could impact our elections. Now, this is an interesting photo here. This really scared people. And you might be confused by that because it looks like a pretty normal photo. But if you focus on the sign on the left, you might notice it says Sunday Mass. And this is a Catholic church Kennedy's walking out of. And for 1960, that made some people worried. This might bring back some thoughts of nativism, as we saw with treatment of Irish immigrants, mostly Catholics. And yeah, that's coming back a bit here. Here's a quote: "The single biggest obstacle to his election was his religion. You should have seen the hate mail that came in, both from rednecks and from liberal intellectuals who should have known better. People really came after Kennedy with the fear that he would follow the Pope, the Vatican, not his country. And this is an image we've used before, right? There's the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church. He's kind of pointing over to Washington as if he has control over it. This was the fear. Now, Kennedy had to address this directly. Here's his response. Contrary to common newspaper usage, I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president, who happens also to be a Catholic. I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me. And as you can see by the newspaper headline, Kennedy clinches it. It actually leads in part to a very close, but a victory for John F. Kennedy. That being said, if you have the Kennedy document open, you'll see there's a part 1 overview, and there's 5 questions connected to this video right here. So you can't see the video on what I'm having right now. You're gonna have to open up the PowerPoint, hit play. Let me know if there's any issues there. And some of the things you want to look for as you watch this, you want to be looking for what he represented in his inauguration, kind of think more of, not from a policy perspective, but more of a personality perspective. You're going to be looking for this Bay of Pigs thing, and no, it's not a feast, it's in Cuba. You're going to have another Cuban connection. This is on this little review, Cuban Missile Crisis. You'll see a little connection of Kennedy and the Civil Rights Movement, and then a little preview of our relationship with South Vietnam. So if you want to pause the video here and go back and watch that, take care of part 1, that's totally understandable. But I'll be continuing on to part 2. Part 2 is talking about the space age and Camelot. Now, we've talked about space really once in our class. We talked about Sputnik, right? We talked about how the Russians actually beat us to outer space with the first orbiting satellite. And that comes up with John F. Kennedy. He's actually trying to push America to rethink our space program now that the Russians have beaten us to outer space once. So that's what we see here. We see the orbit of Sputnik. Remember, although this image may make it seem rather large, it's very small still. Scared us quite a bit. Now, this is a speech that Kennedy gives, and he promises the American people that he's going to put us on the moon, right? And that will happen by 1969. Unfortunately, Kennedy will not be allowed to see it, but yeah, Neil Armstrong will actually land on the moon. This is a very good speech of his, definitely worth listening to. We choose to do the hard thing because they are hard, right? Great line. But that being said, he's also kind of, oh, there's Neil Armstrong. There you go. And no, the flag's not waving in the wind, so don't start calling it a hoax. It's just an optics thing. Now, this next idea that was about something called Camelot. Now, if you remember Camelot, it's the King Arthur idea. It's the Knights of the Round Table, and kind of a nobility to that, kind of a romanticism. And we kind of see that with Kennedy and his presidency. You even see this book over here, Capturing Camelot. The quote, "There will be great presidents again, but there will never be another Camelot." This idea that he and his family were perfect. They were the American model of society. Many said they were the best advertisement against the Cold War. I'm sorry, not against Cold War, but against communism, against Russian influences. There's his wife Jackie, their 2 children. Unfortunately, you know, as with most things in history, it's the devil's in the details. They were not the perfect family. This is actually a video of Marilyn Monroe singing to John F. Kennedy on his birthday, which kind of brought up some of his mere extracurricular activities. But it really got me thinking, like, do we have like Camelot today? Do we have anything like that? And you may disagree, but these are the kind of examples I came up with. So maybe you could say we have a Camelot today, maybe not. But those are some, at least maybe popular families we still kind of follow and to an extent worship. But unfortunately, as with most things, there's not a great ending to this tale. John F. Kennedy's presidency will only be about 1,000 days. He's actually in Dallas, Texas, assassinated. He's shot several times. This is a photo of the parade shortly before the assassination occurs. Here's a video of Walter Cronkite infamously kind of announcing to the nation the death of the president, who, as we learned earlier, embodied such hope for the nation. It does kind of mark an end of innocence. We talked about baby boomers. You kind of see that here, right? That the generation born after World War II, now they're very much emerging into adulthood, right? Their teen years, and having such a young president killed definitely altered their perspectives as far as what life would be to come. There's plenty of stories revolving around his assassination. What traditionally happens is you can see the kind of progression of his car throughout downtown Dallas. And what's launched is something called the Warren Commission to try and investigate the death of Kennedy. And what the Warren Commission found was that from this book depository, Lee Harvey Oswald was the sole gunman, how he actually fired 3 times. Actually 4 times. There was a tree ricochet that caused a wound. There was 2 shots that also hit Kennedy as well. Now, there's tons of, how should you say, conspiracy theories about, a second shooter being on the grassy knoll or bullet angles, and there's a lot to it. But the official government report is that the death of Kennedy was done by Lee Harvey Oswald. And with the death of the president, you have the new vice president have to be sworn in. This is a rather powerful photo. They're on Air Force One as now President Johnson sworn in. This is Jackie Kennedy, Kennedy's wife. She's still got her husband's blood on her. Kennedy's body's on the plane. It's definitely a powerful moment. This is a photo of the funeral procession. There's his wife Jackie in the middle. There's his brother Ted, who would go on to be a senator for a very long time. And this is Robert Kennedy, his brother, who we'll see actually come up in our class a little bit later. He'll unfortunately also have a tragic end. This is a little video showcasing Lee Harvey Oswald as he's informed he's been charged with murdering the president. And here's a shot of Lee Harvey Oswald actually being killed himself. So he was never gone on trial, never convicted, but as we'll see, the Warren Commission will rule he is the responsible one for Kennedy's death. So that's kind of what we're talking about, John F. Kennedy. If you're following with the Word document, you should be able to answer parts 1, 2, and 3. All this info may appear on our kind of Friday assessment. So please let me know if there's anything that you had questions about or I could clarify. All right, I'll be posting these most days depending on where we are with the content. So thanks for listening.